Mr. Speaker, I come before you today to move a motion for the approval of the budget statement and economic policy of the government of Ghana for the year ending 31st December 2021. Right Honorable Speaker, let me at the very outset express my profound gratitude to the President for the trust and confidence reposed in me in designating me as the Minister with temporary responsibility for the Ministry of Finance. In these past 5 days, I have received massive cooperation and indeed guidance from His Excellency, the Vice President, the head of the Economic Management Team. Mr. Charles Adubuaheng, the President's representative at the Ministry of Finance, and the Minister-designate for Finance, Mr. Ken Ufuriata, from far away United States of America, the technical team at the Ministry of Finance. May I also thank my colleague, ministers, and members of Parliament for the expression of good wishes and support. Let me also, Speaker, on this momentous occasion, wish the First Lady of the Republic happiest birthday for attaining the biblical optimum age of 70. Today, Friday, the 12th of March. Speaker, to Mrs. Irene Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu, let me just say, what can I do without you? The Speaker, colleagues, I want to believe.
Honorable Minister, is it an invitation for her to come and stand by you?
Mr. Speaker, you know that she is a stranger in this house, and our rules will not permit her to stand by me. Otherwise, I know I will have the permission of the minority leader, in whom I'm sometimes well pleased to be by my side. Mr. Speaker, I was saying that I want to believe that the facts of the majority leader in the government business, one of our own, presenting the budget statement in this House, should provide sufficient mitigation to subdue the flame of heckling from the professional hecklers. That's because they know themselves. And I know one is pointing at me now. Right, Honorable Speaker, honorable members of Parliament, on the authority of His Excellency, the President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, I beg to move that this Honorable House approves the financial policy of Government of Ghana for the year ending 31st December 2021. On the authority of His Excellency the President, and in accordance with Articles 179 and 180 of the 1992 Republican Constitution, permit me to present to this august House the budget of the President of the Republic of Ghana. Speaker, this statement is an abridged version of the 2021 budget statement, and I would like to request the Hazard Department to deem the entirety of the budget statement and economic policy as having been read and capture same in the Hansard of today, Friday, the 12th of March, 2021, upon my completion of this submission. The Speaker also submits to this August House the following statutory reports. The 2020 annual report on the petroleum funds, in accordance with Section 48 of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, 2011, Act 815 as amended, the 2020 report on the utilization of the African Union levies, and third, the 2020 annual debt report in accordance with Section 72 of the Public Financial Management Act 2016, Act 921. Mr. Speaker, on 28th of October 2020, and in accordance with Article 180 of the 1992 Constitution, government laid the expenditure in advance of appropriation in this House. I wish to report that the subsequent approval of those estimates by this August House has made it possible for government business and public services delivery to continue uninterrupted in the first quarter of 2021. Speaker, just 3 days ago, on the 9th of March 2021, His Excellency, the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, presented the first message on the state of the nation of his second term. In that address, he clearly stated that even though, like other countries around the world, we've had to go through the worst possible pandemic of our lifetime, the nation is in relative good state, thanks to the grace of God and to the swift, decisive, responsible, and necessary actions taken by government to contain the virus, support families, and sustain the economy. Today, Mr. Speaker, I stand here on behalf of the President to present to you and the House the state of the economy, how we have managed to mitigate and survive the pandemic, and eke out a projected positive growth rate of 0.9% in 2020, contrary to the initial fears of a negative growth rate as experienced in many countries. I will also present to you deliberate and well-thought-out strategies that will hasten our recovery and place us on a confident path of sustained economic transformation. Mr. Speaker, the year 2020 was a difficult period for Ghana and the rest of the world. Never before in recent history has a pandemic triggered such dramatic changes to lives and livelihoods simultaneously. The last of such pandemic of global impact was the Spanish flu in 1918, over 100 years ago. The ensuing crisis has disrupted supply chains and exerted undue pressure on economic and financial systems, killed businesses and jobs. Developing and emerging economies, including Ghana, have had to deal with external headwinds, falling commodity prices, and rising expenditures to address the effects of the pandemic. The International Monetary Fund has estimated that the global economy contracted by 3.5%, while global trade also contracted by 9.6%. The COVID-19 pandemic has upended the economies of over 150 countries and is the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression in the 1930s. Speaker, for the first time in our 64 years of nationhood, the government has had to tackle an unforgiving simultaneous health and economic crisis. The outbreak and the ensuing partial lockdown to contain the spread of the virus and protect lives and livelihoods brought socio-economic activities to a visual standstill, with the resultant loss of jobs, incomes, collapse of businesses, and loss of government revenues. Mr. Speaker, from the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in March 2020, His Excellency the President laid out 5 key objectives government sought to achieve. 1, limit and stop the importation of the virus. 2, contain its spread. 3, provide adequate care for the sick. 4, limit the impact of the virus on social and economic life. And 5, inspire the expansion of our domestic capability and deepening our self-reliance. The President made it an utmost priority to protect Ghanaian lives and, above all else, This is captured in his now world-famous quotation, and I quote, "We know what to do to bring our economy back to life. What we do not know how to do is to bring people back to life," unquote. Under his leadership, the country took the required swift, drastic, and decisive measures to mitigate the spread of the pandemic. We rapidly mobilized and deployed extensive internal and external resources to support Ghanaian households and enterprises. The Speaker, at this juncture, permit me to acknowledge the support of our development partners, namely the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the African Development Bank, the European Union, and other bilateral partners who made available significant resources to complement our efforts. Mr. Speaker, the drastic slowdown in economic activity led to a huge drop in domestic revenues, combined with sharp and unplanned hike in COVID-related expenditures. In sum, this unprecedented crisis led to, one, a sudden shortfall in government revenues amounting to 13.6 billion Ghana cedis, and two, an unexpected and unavoidable rise in expenditures of 11.7 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, through government's Emergency Preparedness and Response Plan, ERP 1 and 2, as well as the Coronavirus Alleviation Program, CAP, we undertook the following measures. One, provided financial clearance to employ additional 24,285 health professionals between March and June to help fight the pandemic. Two, expanded the capacities of laboratories to increase COVID-19 testing and established isolation centers in all regions and districts. We provided 3.6 million reusable face masks, 50,000 medical scraps, 90,000 hospital gowns and head covers to health facilities as of June 2020. We provided 50% of basic salary as allowances for frontline health workers, waived income tax for all healthcare workers, waived income tax on 50% additional allowances paid to frontline health workers, absorbed the transport costs and cost of sustenance for contact tracers and field surveillance officers. Fully recovered water consumption for all Ghanaians from April to December 2020, and fully covered the power consumption of over 1 million Lifeline customers, and subsidized the consumption of all other customers by 50%. Rolled out the 750 million Ghana cedis caps and buzz programs in May 2020 to directly support micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. We established a 2 billion guarantee facility to support all large enterprises and for job retention. 12, 100 million Ghana cedi fund for labor and faith-based organizations for training and skills development. An unemployment insurance scheme to provide temporary income support to workers who were laid off due to the pandemic. 14, we transferred over 50 million to 400,000 most vulnerable individuals under the LEAP program. Provided cooked meals to 2.744723 vulnerable persons, and worked with faith-based organizations to distribute dry food packages to 470,000 families. We provided hot meals for 584,000 final year junior high school students and 146,000 staff of public and private schools from August 24th to September 18, 2020, as they wrote their final examinations. We supplied 5.2 million reusable face masks, 64,000 Veronica buckets, 8,100 thermometer guns, and in excess of 1.5 million pieces of 200 ml of hand sanitizers, as well as over 126,000 gallons of soap to enable schools reopening. We paid WASI examination fees amounting to 75.4 million for 314,000 third-year senior high school students, we reduced the communication service from 9% to 10% to support students and workers who have adopted online platforms to study and work. We extended due dates for filing of taxes from 4 to 6 months after the end of the financial year. We permitted the deduction of contributions and donations towards the pandemic as allowable expenses for income tax purposes. We waived VAT, NHIL, and Get Fund levy on donations of stock of equipment and goods for fighting the pandemic. We waived income taxes on third-tier pension withdrawal. We fumigated schools, hospitals, markets, and lorry parks. We took vigorous public sensitization and engagement exercise to inform and educate Ghanaians on the pandemic. And 26, we paid all public sector salaries in full. With revenue slumping and COVID-related expenditures rising, the Akufo-Addo government was tested beyond measure. We believe it is fair to say that we rose to this extraordinary challenge. Indeed, despite the squeeze, government succeeded in protecting virtually all jobs and incomes in public sector. What the people of Ghana have witnessed since the coronavirus pandemic, and to the admiration of the rest of the world, is the leadership of conviction that is responsible, creative, courageous, decisive, and above all, very caring. Mr. Speaker, through our decisive policy response, we have managed to achieve major results that have made it easier for the people to cope with this unprecedented crisis. For example, our response through CAP has been vital in preventing social dislocations, deeper economic scarring, and damage to our economic prospects. These additional government expenditures in the face of declining revenues were necessary to save lives, protect livelihoods, and safeguard economic activities. Mr. Speaker, today, Ghana is better positioned to recover and rebuild an even more resilient economy, not only because we know how to do it, but also because the grace of God has been assured for this journey. Mr. Speaker, in the 3 years prior to the pandemic, as a government, we had a plan. We stayed focused, kept our discipline, kept our promises, and worked with integrity, creativity, and compassion. As a result, the economy saw a turnaround and economic growth rate doubled, rebounding strongly from 3.4% in 2016 to average 7% annually. Mr. Speaker, the banking sector cleanup had been completed. Businesses were doing well and creating jobs. Food production was enjoying a bumper harvest, and suddenly Ghana had become a major tourist attraction. We were indeed on a path of fiscal consolidation by 2019 and poised for economic transformation. Then out of nowhere, Mr. Speaker, the COVID-19 global pandemic hit us. Mr. Speaker, the history of Ghanaians is a story of resilience, faith in God, and ingenuity when faced with adversities and uncertainties. And so we proceeded from 2017 with discipline, hard work, and cooperation to get Ghana back to work. We took a severely challenged economy and restored its competitiveness within 3 years. In 4 years, against significant opposition, we took a bold step that afforded 1.2 million Ghanaians the opportunity to attain a better and quality secondary school education. We took a financial sector on the brink of collapse, and 4 years cleaned it to build an even stronger financial ecosystem that is well capitalized, liquid, and solvent to fund our progress. In 4 years, we secured a central place in African integration and won the bid to host the Secretariat of the African Continental Free Trade Area. And within the last 4 years, Mr. Speaker, our aggressive industrialization and regional integration agenda successfully attracted and retain the highest foreign direct investment in West Africa, including having global automobile giants setting up base here. Today, world-class vehicles assembled right here in Ghana are selling on our market and plying our roads. The message to other global manufacturers is this: from 2021, an integrated Africa is open for business. And Ghana is ready to welcome you to set up here to take advantage of the biggest free trade area in the world. Mr. Speaker, we have come far from 2020. However, we are not fully out of the woods yet. As such, fiscal consolidation has to be carefully balanced with the provision of some targeted fiscal stimuli to cushion the impact of COVID-19 on businesses and to facilitate a quick and strong recovery of our economy, which we aim to achieve through Ghana Cares, or Batampa program. Mr. Speaker, it is clear that expenditure on health infrastructure and health-related items such as vaccines, hospital supplies, and PPEs would become a routine. However, we'll take measures to ensure that these additional critical expenditures do not undermine our fiscal consolidation and debt sustainability. Government will pursue revenue-enhancing measures with a focus on deepening our digitization agenda, both on transactions of goods and services, as well as on the tax collection systems to broaden the tax base and rope in more eligible taxpayers. Expenditures will be rationalized through the implementation of tighter expenditure control systems with a more efficient procurement system to ensure value for money. We will also pursue structural reforms in public financial management system to improve efficiency in public service delivery. Mr. Speaker, we believe that the achievements in the 3 years prior to the COVID-19 outbreak, as well as the intermediate outcomes of the EPRP and CAP, are the foundations from which we will collectively adapt to the changes caused by this pandemic and, quote, build back better and greener, unquote. Speaker, the seminal breakthroughs in vaccine development gives hope that economies can reopen more quickly than anticipated. However, logistical challenges in access and administration of vaccines and the continued mutation and emergence of more infectious variants of the virus may further delay the resumption of full economic activities around the world. Mr. Speaker, in line with the President's determination to protect the lives of Ghanaians, we have prioritized the vaccination program against COVID-19. Through the bold leadership and adept diplomacy of His Excellency the President, Ghana became the first country in the world to receive its first batch of vaccines of the 600,000 doses through the COVAX initiative on Wednesday, the 24th February 2021. We are also working assiduously to secure vaccine for 20 million Ghanaians to enable us to attain herd immunity by the end of this year. Once again, Ghana has stepped up in front. Thanks to His Excellency the President's leadership, we are championing African excellence to become the vanguard against COVID-19 on this continent. Until we achieve herd immunity, we cannot let our guard down if we are to contain the spread of this virus. We must all commit to taking the vaccines in addition to adhering to the COVID-19 protocols that have been instituted for our safety and gradual return to full economic activities, recovering for sustained transformation. Mr. Speaker, in addition to continuing our priority programs, we will implement additional initiatives to drive recovery. These include: 1, scale up the vaccination of Ghanaians to enable us to attain herd immunity in Ghana by the end of 2021. Continue the implementation of Agenda 111 to provide hospitals and related infrastructure nationwide to improve the delivery of health care. 3, intensify efforts to improve public sanitation. 4, support to those who have lost their jobs due to COVID-19 to find other gainful employment opportunities. 5, deploying resources for our security agencies to maintain peace and security, complete many of our ongoing infrastructure projects within our resource envelope, reflecting the theme of the budget, the implementation of the Ghana Cares program to revitalize the economy and create employment, and 8, continue the implementation of our flagship programs, including Planting for Food and Jobs, the Free Senior High School, and the One District, One Factory agenda, plus the One Village, One Dam agenda. Mr. Speaker, the last 4 years left no Ghanaian in doubt that ours is a government that cares. We care about the welfare of the people. We care about the need for business to create wealth. The next 4 years will see a more clinical structural focus on President Akufo-Addo's transformation agenda as we build with deliberate rapidity on the gains so far made. In this regard, pursuing the 100 billion Ghana Cares or Batampa program, which by far is the boldest and biggest economic recovery program in the country's history, will enable us to turn the challenges created by COVID-19 into opportunities for socio-economic transformation. This program will foster closer collaboration with the Ghanaian private sector, labor, the people, our development partners, and foreign investors. The Obatampa program is inspired by His Excellency the President's conviction that, and I quote, "What our forebears dreamed of, we will achieve. If we inherited dreams and visions from our founding fathers, we should leave legacies of achievements and realities to our children and their children," unquote. Mr. Speaker, through Ghana Cares, we will, 1, expedite government's digitalization agenda to achieve greater efficiency and effectiveness in public service delivery. We will revitalize the housing and construction industry to address the severe housing deficit and create job opportunities, and establish Ghana as a regional hub, leveraging its position within ECOWAS and as host of the Secretariat of the African Continental Free Trade Area, to focus on manufacturing, financial services, education, healthcare, aviation and logistics, digital services, petroleum, automobile, tourism, hospitality, and creative arts. Support the private sector and entrepreneurs to become a powerful engine for job creation. Actively promote both local and international investments, including the use of PPPs, and upgrade the skills of our workers through retraining programs focusing on technical and vocational skills. Mr. Speaker, the implementation arrangements for the Ghana Cares programs are in place. Clear budgets have been set and milestones developed. We will establish delivery units in the relevant MDAs and partner with the private sector, academia, and other practitioners to facilitate and monitor implementation. There will also be regular institutional arrangements to ensure we achieve synergies and track results on a timely basis. Speaker, the theme for the 2021 budget is completion, consolidation, and continuation. This theme is underpinned by the fact that over the years, every new budget invariably contains a host of new projects to be initiated at the expense of ongoing projects. Not only does this put pressure on our finances, but also has historically resulted in arrears, with many contractors not being paid on time for work done, and thereby escalating the overall cost of these projects. The Speaker, government has therefore decided to chart a new direction from 2021. A major concern of all Ghanaians across the political divide is the usually wasteful specter of uncompleted public projects scattered across the country. This must stop. Governments owe the people a duty to use limited public funds responsibly. Our goal is to bring to an end the culture of unfinished projects. The main focus of government for this year, therefore, is the fulfillment of existing commitment and the completion, to the largest extent possible, of existing projects. The delivery tracker, which government launched last year to track progress of infrastructure projects, showed over 8,700 ongoing projects across all sectors at the end of 2020. And that is why the President has tasked his ministers and heads of all other relevant institutions to focus the infrastructural energies of government mainly on continuing and, if possible, completing existing projects in 2021. The era of abandoning viable projects started with public funds must end. And this time we believe, and the time we believe is now. Mr. Speaker, I now proceed to give highlights of the budget. Global economic developments and outlook. Growth. Speaker, data from the IMF's January 2021 World Economic Outlook update indicate that the global economy is projected to grow at 5.5% in 2021, up from the estimated contraction of 3.5% in 2020. The 2021 growth estimates reflects an expected positive turnaround on account of COVID-19 vaccine-powered economic activity and strong policy response in advanced countries. Speaker, despite expectations for global economic recovery between 2021 and 2022, output gaps are not expected to close until after 2022. Consistent with this expectation, inflation is projected to remain subdued during the 2021-2022 years. For advanced economies, inflation is projected to increase from a low of 0.7% in 2020 to 1.3% in 2021, and further to 1.5% in 2022, in consonance with increasing prices of medical supplies and those other commodities. Mr. Speaker, data from the January 2021 edition of the International Monetary Fund World Economic Outlook project Brent crude oil prices to average 50.03 United States dollars for 2021 and 48.82 United States dollars for 2022. Gold, as a safe haven, benefited immensely from the pandemic in 2020. This was sustained by continued monetary easing by major central banks. However, in 2021, gold prices are expected to reduce to an average of 1,740 United States dollars per troy ounce from an average of 1,793 United States dollars per troy ounce recorded in 2020. World market cocoa price averaged 2,369.85 United States dollars per metric ton in 2020, compared with 2,340.74 metric tons in 2019. Cocoa price is expected to gain a 1.6% increase in price and improve to 2,407.77 United States dollars in 2021. Financing conditions. Mr. Speaker, global financing conditions remain generally favorable throughout 2020, reflecting significant policy support, which induced lower borrowing costs, boosted equity valuations, enhanced investor risk appetite, and narrowed sovereign bond spreads across emerging markets and developing economies. These developments helped ease pressures on emerging and frontier market currencies, while sovereign risk spreads for most sub-Saharan African countries declined steadily in the year. Financial market indicators point to optimism about medium-term prospects. However, Mr. Speaker, rising debt levels and increasing interest burdens across several emerging markets and developing economies pose significant financing risks in the short term. Domestic microeconomic performance for 2020. Mr. Speaker, to put the assessment of the performance of the economy for the year 2020 in perspective, We'd like to recap the macroeconomic targets set for 2020 as presented in the 2020 mid-year review as follows. A, overall real GDP growth rate was revised from 6.8% to 0.9%. B, overall non-oil real GDP growth rate was revised from 6.7% to 1.6%. C, end period December inflation was revised from 8% to 11.1%. D, overall budget deficit measured on cash basis was revised from 4.7% of GDP to 11% of GDP. Primary balance was revised from a surplus of 0.8% to a deficit of 4.6% of GDP. And F, end period December stocks of gross international reserves to cover not less than 3.5 months of imports of goods and services. Mr. Speaker, even though complete 2020 gross domestic product data has not yet been released by the Ghana Statistical Service, provisional data for the first 3 quarters of 2020 show that the targets for most of the macroeconomic indicators are largely on track. A summary of this performance is as follows. Speaker, average overall real GDP growth for the first 3 quarters of 2020 was 0.2%, compared with 6.0% for the same period in 2019. The projected outlook for 2020 is 0.9%, reflecting the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Non-oil real GDP grew at an average of 0.4% in the first 3 quarters of 2020. The projected outlook for 2020 is 1.6%. End period inflation was 10.4% in December 2020, compared to the revised target of 11.0%. The overall budget deficit on cash basis was 11.7% of GDP, excluding financial sector cleanup costs, against a revised target of 11.4% of GDP. The primary balance recorded a deficit of 5.3% of GDP against a target deficit of 4.6% of GDP. Gross international reserves accumulated to $8.6 United States billion, the equivalent of 4.1 months of import cover, slightly above target. Mr. Speaker, detailed performance in the real monetary, external, and fiscal sectors of the economy are provided below. Mr. Speaker, provisional estimates from the Ghana Statistical Service show that average overall GDP for 2020 grew at 4.9% in quarter 1, negative 3.2% in quarter 2, and negative 1.1% in quarter 3, bringing the average GDP growth rate for the period to 0.2%, reflecting mainly the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the economy, as I've already related to. The most recent work on GDP puts 2020 projected GDP growth outlook at 0.9%. In terms of sectoral performance, the agricultural sector grew at an average of 4.5% in the first 3 quarters of 2020, followed by the services sector at 1.9%, while the industry sector contracted by 3.1% over the period. Mr. Speaker, price developments within the year were largely driven by volatile food prices, while non-food inflation remained fairly stable. Headline inflation rose sharply from 7.9% in December 2019 to 11.4% in July 2020. The upward trend was mainly driven by panic buying episodes preceding the COVID-19 partial lockdown measure, which exerted significant pressures on food prices. However, with the gradual lifting of restrictions, the food price pressures eased and headline inflation steadily declined to 10.4% at the end of December 2020. Monetary aggregation credits. Speaker, developments in the monetary sector during the year 2020 broadly showed increased pace of growth in all monetary aggregates, reflecting improved liquidity conditions in the economy. This was underpinned by supportive monetary and fiscal policies implemented to mitigate the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Provisional data on monetary aggregates at the end of December 2020 showed that broad money, including foreign currency deposits, grew on year-on-year basis by 29.6% compared to 21.7% in December 2019. Annual growth in banks' outstanding credit decreased in December 2020 relative to what was recorded in the corresponding period in 2019. The nominal annual growth of outstanding credit slowed from 23.9% in December 2019 to 5.8% in December 2020. Similarly, nominal growth in credit to the private sector slowed from 18.0% in 2019 relative to 10.6% in December 2020. In real terms, annual growth of outstanding credit to the private sector moderated from 9.39% growth in December 2019 to 0.17% in December 2020. Interest rates. Speaker, interest rates in the money market generally trended downwards in 2020 on year-on-year basis in line with the monetary policy rate. The 91-day and 182-day Treasury bill rates declined to 14.08% and 14.13% respectively in December 2020 from 14.69% and 15.15% in December 2019. Similarly, the rate on the 364-day instrument decreased to 16.98% from 17.88% over the same comparative period. Rates on secondary bond markets have also broadly declined, except rates on the 5-year and 7-year bonds, which increased by 35 basis points and 425 basis points to settle at 19.85% and 20.50% respectively. The weighted average interbank rate declined from 15.2% to 13.56%, resulting in improved liquidity conditions on the interbank market and increased trading among banks. Average lending rates of banks also declined to 21.10% in December 2020 from 23.59% recorded in corresponding period of 2019. External sector. Mr. Speaker, the external sector performance was also impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic through the trade and financial channels. The trade account recorded a lower surplus of $2.0 billion United States dollars, or 3.0% of GDP in 2020, compared with $2.3 billion United States dollars, equivalent to 3.4% of GDP in 2019. The decline in the surplus was driven largely by a 7.8% contraction in total export receipts, especially from crude oil exports, which declined sharply by 35.2%. In addition, the value of total imports contracted by 7.3%, reflecting a slowdown in import demand due to the pandemic. The lower trade surplus, coupled with higher services outflows, resulted in a current account deficit of $2.0 United States billion, equivalent to 3.0% of GDP in 2020, compared to a deficit of $1.9 United States billion, equivalent to 2.8% of GDP in 2019. These developments, Mr. Speaker, resulted in an overall balance of payments deficit of $630 million United States dollars in 2020, compared with a surplus of $1.3 billion United States dollars in 2019. The deficit of the balance of payments was on account of marginal worsening of the current account deficit and a decreased net capital inflows in the capital and financial accounts. Gross international reserves. Mr. Speaker, gross international reserves stood at $8.6 billion United States dollars equivalent to 4.1 months of import cover at the end of December 2020, from a stock position of 8.4 billion, equivalent to 4.0 months import cover as of December 2019. Exchange rate development. The foreign exchange market was relatively stable, and local currency performed better in 2020 than in 2019. Pressures from corporate demand, energy-related forex demand, and pandemic-induced portfolio outflows were offset by improved forex inflows, mainly from the Eurobond issuance and the IMF Rapid Credit Facility. These were complemented by the substantial reserve buildup by the Bank of Ghana at the end of 2019. Cumulatively, Mr. Speaker, the Ghana cedi depreciated against the United States dollar, the pound sterling, the euro by 3.9%, 7.1%, and 12.1%, respectively. This compares with the larger depreciation rates of 12.9%, 15.7%, and 11.2% for the United States dollar, pound sterling, and euro, respectively, during the same period in 2019. It is worth noting that the depreciation of the Ghana cedi against the US dollar in 2020 is the lowest recorded in the Fourth Republic, notwithstanding the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Speaker, it is worth noting, since my colleague, the Honorable Atiforsin, is beckoning me to state that the depreciation of Ghana cedi against the United States dollar in 2020 is the lowest recorded in the Fourth Republic, notwithstanding the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Speaker, the 2020 fiscal policy objectives were adversely affected by the outbreak of the 2019 pandemic, which resulted in the recalibration of the 2020 fiscal framework during the 2020 mid-year fiscal policy review to accommodate the unanticipated shocks and enable Ghana government to implement policies and programs to ensure that both lives and livelihoods were protected. Mr. Speaker, total revenues and grants was raised downwards by 13.4 billion to reflect the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on revenues, while total expenditures were revised upwards by 11.8 billion to accommodate COVID-19 related expenditures, resulting in a revised budget deficit of 11.4% of GDP for 2020. Mr. Speaker, the unprecedented impact imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic led to the suspension of the set of fiscal responsibility rules for the 2020 financial year in accordance with Section 3, Sub 1 of the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2018, Act 9A2. Despite the adverse impact of the pandemic on the Ghanaian economy, especially in the first half of the year, implementation of the 2020 revised budget was largely on track. The provisional data of government's fiscal operations from January to December 2020 indicate that total revenue and grants exceeded a revised target of 2.7%, amounting to 55.12 billion, while total expenditures, including arrears clearance, amounted to 100,052 million, exceeding programmed expenditures by 2.4%. The consequent modest increase in total expenditures, despite the force majeure imposed by COVID-19 induced expenditures, is a clear indication that government adopted prudent expenditure management measures over the period. Mr. Speaker, the above revenue and expenditure performance resulted in an overall fiscal deficit of 11.7% of GDP, excluding the financial sector cleanup cost. Speaker, and let me repeat, that the above revenue and expenditure performance resulted in an overall fiscal deficit of 11.7% of GDP, and that excludes the financial sector cleanup cost, compared to the program deficit of 11.4% of GDP. The corresponding primary balance for the period was also a deficit of 5.3% of GDP, compared with the revised deficit target of 4.6% of GDP. The fiscal deficit, including the financial sector cost for 2020, is 13.7% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, Act 2018, Act 9A2. Despite the adverse impact of the pandemic on the Ghanaian economy, especially in the first half of the year, implementation of the 2020 revised budget was largely on track. The provisional data of government's fiscal operations from January to December 2020 indicate that total revenue and grants exceeded the revised target of 2.7%, amounting to 55.12 billion, while total expenditures, including arrears clearance, amounted to 100,052 million, exceeding programmed expenditures by 2.4%. The consequent modest increase in total expenditures, despite the force majeure imposed by COVID-19 induced expenditures, is a clear indication that government adopted prudent expenditure management measures over the period. Mr. Speaker, the above revenue and expenditure performance resulted in an overall fiscal deficit of 11.7% of GDP, excluding the financial sector cleanup cost. Speaker, and let me repeat, that the above revenue and expenditure performance resulted in an overall fiscal deficit of 11.7% of GDP, and that excludes the financial sector cleanup cost, compared to the program deficit of 11.4% of GDP. The corresponding primary balance for the period was also a deficit of 5.3% of GDP, compared with the revised deficit target of 4.6% of GDP. The fiscal deficit, including the financial sector cost for 2020, is 13.7% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, was financed from both domestic and external sources. Given the tightness of the external financing conditions, government had to resort more to domestic financing, including drawdown in government deposits at the central bank, domestic market operations, and other sources of domestic financing. Net domestic financing amounted to 44.889 billion, equivalent to 11.7% of GDP. Net foreign financing amounted to 31 million against a target of 18.46 billion, or 4.8% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, petroleum liftings and receipts. Total crude oil production for 2020 was 66.9 million barrels, compared to 71.4 million barrels in 2019. As of December 2020, the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation had lifted 12 parcels of crude oil on behalf of the state and transported 88.418 million standard cubic feet of gas to the Ghana National Gas Company, GNGC. Total petroleum receipts, that's proceeds from liftings and other petroleum receipts, as at end 2020, amounted to $666.4 million United States dollars, equivalent to 3.8 billion Ghana cedis, compared with the receipts of $937.6 million United States dollars, equivalent to 4.9 billion Ghana cedis in the same period for 2019. These receipts were allocated based on the provisions of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, as amended. In particular, the GMPC was allocated a total of 198.6 million United States dollars, made up of equity financing cost of 154.8 million United States dollars, and a share of the net carried and participating interest of 43.8 million United States dollars. The annual budget funding amount received a total of 273.4 million United States dollars, while the Ghana Petroleum Funds received 166.6 million United States dollars. The Ghana Petroleum Funds were distributed to the Ghana Stabilization Fund and the Ghana Heritage Fund in the ratio of 7:3, consistent with the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. Thus, the Ghana Stabilization Fund received $116.6 million US, while the Ghana Heritage Fund received $49.9 million US. Public debt development. Mr. Speaker, the provisional debt stock as it ends December 2020 stood at a nominal figure of $291.614 billion, representing 76.1% of GDP, compared with $217.991 billion, equivalent to 62.4% of GDP in 2019. Mr. Speaker, the total debt stock mix was made up of a provisional figure of $141.780 billion for external debt and $149.83389 billion for domestic debt, accounting approximately for 48% and 51.4% of the total public debt stock, respectively. As a percentage of GDP, external domestic debt represented 36.99% and 39.09%, respectively. Speaker, the total public debt has increased from $122 billion, that is 6.9 GDP, to $291.6 billion, that is 76.1% of GDP, as at the end of December 2020. Included in the debt stock and the debt to GDP ratio at the end of 2020 are the following non-recurrent burdens that we had to deal with as a matter of urgency. One, the fiscal impact of COVID-19 is $19.7 billion. The cost of the financial sector cleanup is 21 billion Ghana cedis. Cost of excess capacity charges paid to IPPs, that's 12 billion Ghana cedis. The impact of the reduction in growth from an average of 7% to 0.9% in 2020. Speaker, if these expenditures are excluded and the drop in GDP growth in 2020 primarily attributable to COVID-19 pandemic is taken into account, the total stock of debt for 2020 would have been approximately $239.9 billion, implying a debt to GDP ratio of 58.7%. Mr. Speaker, the following information is useful. Between 2004 and 2008, Ghana's debt stock increased by 30%. Between 2008 and 2012, the debt stock increased by 269%. Between 2012 and 2016, the increase in the debt stock was 243%. Between 2016, the increase in the debt stock was 137%. This includes the costs of the banking sector cleanup, excess capacity charges, and the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Speaker, these are the facts according to the figures. Mr. Speaker, despite the impact of the pandemic, the rate of growth of the public debt has been lower under our government than under previous governments. The rate of growth, and do the calculations on not your laptops, but on your cell phones. Mr. Speaker, the rate of debt growth was lower despite the massive investments in our flagship programs such as free senior high school, planting for food and jobs, NAPCO, one district, one factory, one village, one dam, one constituency, one ambulance, and the restoration of teacher and nursing training allowances, among others, while maintaining relative macroeconomic and exchange rate stability. Mr. Speaker, this reinforces the fact that the Akufo-Addo and indeed the NPP government are simply better managers of the economy and better protectors of the public purse. And I'll turn to the medium-term macroeconomic targets. Mr. Speaker, the preoccupation of government in 2021 in the medium term, and therefore, is to implement measures. The preoccupation of government in 2021 in the medium term, therefore, is to implement measures to mitigate the impact of the pandemic with a view to returning the economy to strong and sustainable growth while protecting lives and livelihoods. Mr. Speaker, government will continue to, 1, build strong macroeconomic fundamentals, 2, sustain investments in productive infrastructure, 3, develop a competitive world-class human capital base, 4, promote an efficient, well-capitalized financial sector, build a competitive business environment anchored on scientific and technological innovation, and 6, pursue a robust social protection system that guarantees an acceptable standard of living for all, consistent with the vision of Ghana Beyond Aid and the President's coordinated program. The broad macroeconomic objectives to support our vision development goals in the medium term are: A, restore and sustain macroeconomic stability anchored on fiscal discipline and ensuring debt sustainability. We are cocksure we can do that with better managers in control of the steering wheel. Mr. Speaker, we intend to return to within the fiscal responsibility threshold of 5% fiscal deficit and a positive primary balance by 2024 in accordance with the FRA Act, the Financial Responsibility Act 2018, Act 9A2. C, we would implement reforms to increase revenue mobilization and the efficiency of public expenditures. D, will revitalize and transform the economy through the implementation of the Ghana COVID-19 Alleviation, Revitalization, and Enterprise Support Program, CARES. Build a robust financial sector to support growth and development. F, provide a supportive private sector environment for entrepreneurship, domestic businesses, and foreign direct investment to thrive. G, deepen structural reforms to make the machinery of government work more efficiently and effectively to support socio-economic transformation. H, implement reforms to increase revenue mobilization and the efficiency of public expenditures. Mr. Speaker, guided by the broad medium-term policy objectives, the following macroeconomic targets are set for 2021-2024 medium term. Overall GDP, real GDP growth rate to average 5.0%, non-oil real GDP to grow at an average of 4.9%, inflation to be within the target band of 8 plus or minus 2%, overall fiscal balance and primary balance to return to the Fiscal Responsibility Act threshold of fiscal deficit of 5% of GDP and a positive balance by 2024, and gross international reserves to cover at least 4.0 months of imports. Speaker, based on the overall macroeconomic objectives and the medium-term targets, the following macroeconomic targets are set for 2021. Overall GDP growth of 5.0%, non-oil real GDP growth of 6.7%, end-period inflation of 8%, fiscal deficit of 9.5% of GDP, primary deficit of 1.2% of GDP, and gross international reserves to cover not less than 4.0 months of imports. The Speaker, we now provide details of the medium-term outlook for real fiscal, monetary, and external sectors of the economy. GDP growth for 2021. The Speaker, as I've indicated, overall real GDP is projected to grow at 5.0% in 2021, while non-real GDP is projected to grow at 6.7%. In terms of sectoral growth, the agricultural sector is expected to grow at 4.0%, industry sector at 4.8%, and the services sector at 5.6%. Mr. Speaker, monetary policy in 2021 and the medium term will continue to hinge on sustaining price stability with a view to firmly anchoring inflation expectations and creating conditions favorable to growth. Specifically, monetary policy would aim at steering inflation back within the medium-term target of 8 plus or minus 2%. In particular, broad money supply growth is projected to moderate in 2021 in line with inflation. The thrust of external sector policy would focus on building external buffers, enough to cover at least 4 months of imports of goods and services to cushion the economy against adverse external shocks. This will be supported by expected improvements in the trade balance and the current account balance, backed by increased remittance inflows, improved portfolio inflows, and favorable assets to the international capital market. Potential downside risks to the external sector outlook continue to be the possible weakening of commodity prices, increased energy-related payments, and portfolio reversals. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to announce that the resolution of the banking industry has been completed. Government has been working to complete the bailout of the asset management industry through the provision of a bailout package for investors of the failed asset management companies out of an estimated 8.5 billion Ghana cedis to help pay investors of the failed AMCs. This August House approved an amount of 3.1 billion in 2020 mid-year budget. At the end of the 2020 December, government had provided an amount of 3.4 billion for the payment of validated claims to investors of 30 AMCs for which liquidation orders were obtained. This amount was in the combination of a 3-year marketable bond of 2.5 billion Ghana cedis and a 5-year zero-coupon bond of 915 million Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, for the Securities and Exchange Commission to fully settle investors of the remaining 17 AMCs, an amount of 5.5 billion, 1.3% of GDP, is required. For this reason, we have come to this House once again to seek for your approval to raise an amount of 5.5 billion in 2021 to complete the asset management industry bailout, including Gold Coast Fund Management Limited, now Black Shield Capital Management, First Bank Financial Services Limited, Liberty Asset Management, Bridge Capital Asset Management Limited, Ideal Capital Partners Limited, and Frontline Capital Advisors Limited. International Capital Market Operations for 2021. Mr. Speaker, over the past few years, many frontier and emerging economies have broadened the range of debt instruments they have deployed. Financial conditions on the global market has raised opportunities to tap into the international bond market and increase access to commercial debt financing. However, market access conditions are highly uncertain and spreads can widen in a short time in reaction to local or international events. Following from this, the Ministry of Finance took a proactive approach and presented and secured parliamentary approval on 10th November 2020 for this as part of the 2021 expenditure in advance of appropriation for the 2021 fiscal year. The proceeds are to support the budget deficit by funding growth-oriented expenditures and conduct liability on both external and domestic bonds. The limit of funding from the capital market was up to $5 billion United States dollars through multiple instruments made up of Eurobonds, diaspora bonds, sustainable bonds, green bonds, and social bonds, and a syndicated term bridge financing. Mr. Speaker, we certainly are not fully out of the woods yet with the ongoing COVID-19 second wave, but such fiscal consolidation has to be carefully balanced with the provision of some targeted fiscal stimulus to cushion the impact of COVID-19 on businesses and the economy, which we aim to achieve through the Ghana Cares or BATAPA program. Mr. Speaker, in the medium term, we will pursue revenue-enhancing measures with a focus on deepening our digitalization agenda, both on transactions of goods and services, as well as on tax collection machinery, as part of measures to broaden the tax base and rope in a lot more eligible taxpayers into the tax net. Expenditures will be rationalized through the implementation of tighter expenditure control systems with much more efficient procurement system to ensure value for money. We'll also pursue structural reforms in public financial management system to improve efficiency in public service delivery. Mr. Speaker, in spite of our drive to ensure that we do not prematurely withdraw fiscal stimulus support as part of measures to contain the pandemic and revitalize the economy, our resolve to ensure debt sustainability in the medium term will support a medium-term fiscal path that will ensure that we return to fiscal responsibility ceiling of a deficit of 5% of GDP and a positive primary balance by 2024. Petroleum receipts and utilization for 2021. Mr. Speaker, the projected petroleum revenue for 2021 will amount, as I've already indicated, to $885.7 million United States dollars. The total revenue is made up of royalties, 201 million United States dollars, carried and participating interest to 524.9 million United States dollars, corporate income tax 158.5 United States dollars, and surface rentals 1.3 million United States dollars. Mr. Speaker, in line with the PRMA, we would like to propose the allocation of the petroleum revenue as follows. 1, allocate 283 million to GNPC for its equity financing cost, 179.33 United States million dollars, and share of the net carried and participating interest, 103.69 million. Allocate 70% of the benchmark revenue of United States dollars, 602.7 million, to ABFA. Allocate 30% of the benchmark revenue to the Ghana Petroleum Funds, and allocate 126.57 million of the Ghana Petroleum Funds amount to the Ghana Stabilization Fund, and 54.24 million to the Ghana Heritage Fund. Mr. Speaker, total revenue and grants for 2021 is projected to rise to 72.452 billion, equivalent to 16.7% of GDP, up from an outturn of 55.132 billion Ghana cedis, equivalent to 14.3% of GDP recorded in 2020. Domestic revenue is estimated at 70.987 billion in 2021 as Ghana cedis, and represents an annual growth of 31.7% over the recorded outturn for 2020. Of the total domestic revenue, non-oil tax revenue will constitute about 74% and amount to 53.632 billion, equivalent to 12.4% of GDP, reflecting the impact of expected improvements in tax compliance and reforms in revenue administration. Mr. Speaker, government recognizes that as a result of the impact of COVID-19, times indeed are hard for many of our people. However, it is important that we rebuild and strengthen our public finances to provide the resources to protect the lives and livelihoods of Ghanaians, deliver critical government services, and support the transformation of the economy. It will also ensure fiscal and debt sustainability. We have to do this ourselves, as no one will do it for us. Rebuilding our public finances requires us to implement some important fiscal measures to mobilize additional domestic revenue. Mr. Speaker, government recognizes that as a result of the impact of COVID-19, Speaker, as I've already said, rebuilding our public finances requires us to implement some important fiscal measures to mobilize additional domestic revenue. COVID-19 Health Levy. Speaker, the COVID-19 pandemic has caused additional health spending that far exceeds the annual budget for health. Some of the actions that are being implemented by government to address this pandemic include: 1, procurement of vaccines. The first batch of 600,000 doses from the COVAX facility, as I've already related to, have already been delivered. An additional 17,600,000 vaccine doses to be delivered by June, with more to come in the course of the year. Vaccination of Ghanaians, as at Wednesday, 10th of March, 2021, is 262,365 Ghanaians receiving the first dose of the vaccines. Establishment of 14 medical waste treatment facilities across the country for safe disposal of medical waste in collaboration with the private sector. 33 major health projects have been approved for implementation at a cost of 890 million euros. To date, 14,600,000 pieces of personal protective equipment, PPEs, produced domestically for health workers, students, teaching and non-teaching staff of tertiary and secondary educational institutions. Agenda 111 will see to the construction of 100-bed district hospitals in 101 districts with no hospitals, 7 regional hospitals for the new regions, including one for the Western region, the construction of 2 new psychiatric hospitals for the Middle Belt and Northern Belt, respectively, and the rehabilitation of the Ifeanyi Hospital in the Western region. Personal protective equipment, PPEs, produced domestically for health workers, students, teaching and non-teaching staff of tertiary and secondary educational institutions. Agenda 111 will see to the construction of 100-bed district hospitals in 101 districts with no hospitals, 7 regional hospitals for the new regions, including one for the Western region, the construction of 2 new psychiatric hospitals for the Middle Belt and Northern Belt, respectively, and the rehabilitation of the Ifeanyi Hospital in the Western region. To recruit more health care professionals, in addition to the 100,000 recruited in the first term of the president. To provide the requisite resources to address these challenges and fund these activities, government is proposing the introduction of a COVID-19 health levy of 1 percentage point increase in the national health insurance levy and a 1 percentage point increase in the VAT flat rate to support expenditures related to COVID-19. Sanitation and pollution levy. Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding the progress that we have made in the areas of sanitation and pollution, there is still a lot more to be done. Specifically, we need to, 1, improve urban air quality and combat air pollution. 2, we should support the re-engineering of landfill sites at Pone and Oti. 3, support fumigation of public spaces, schools, health centers, and markets, including lorry parks. Revamp, reconstruct poorly managed landfill facilities. 5, construct more sustainable state-of-the-art waste treatment plants, both solid and liquid, in selected locations across the country. 6, construct waste recycling and compost plants across the country. 7, construct more sanitation facilities to accelerate the elimination of open defecation. 8, construct final treatment and disposal sites for solid and liquid waste. 9, provide dedicated support for the annual maintenance and management of major landfill sites and other waste treatment plants and facilities across the country. 10, construct medical waste treatment facilities to prevent the generation of infectious diseases, especially under the coronavirus treatment program. Mr. Speaker, these are all very critical investments that have to be made for the benefit and dignity of all Ghanaians. These will ensure sustainable sanitation management, improve the quality of life, and reduce the number of deaths and diseases from poor sanitation. To provide the requisite resources to address these challenges and fund these activities, government is proposing a Sanitation and Pollution Levy, SPL, of 10 pesos on the price per liter of petrol or diesel under the Energy Sector Levies Act, ESLA, Energy Sector Recovery Levy, Delta Fund. Mr. Speaker, it will be recalled, yes, Bola tax, to clean up our environment so that you are not afflicted by diseases. Mr. Speaker, it will be recalled that when crude oil prices increased substantially between 2017 and 2018, government abolished excise taxes and reduced special petroleum tax from 17.5% to 13% to mitigate the impact on domestic petroleum prices. However, due to the difficulties faced by the economy arising from higher excess capacity payments in the energy sector, which have not reflected in energy tariffs. Despite substantial progress made by the Akufo-Addo government, there is a need to find additional resources to cover the excess capacity charges that have resulted from the power purchase agreements, PPAs, signed by the previous administration, which required payments of capacity charges even when the plants involved were idle or unutilized. Mr. Speaker, it has become very necessary for government to consider a review of the energy sector levies. The Energy Sector Recovery Levy of 20 pesos per liter on petrol, diesel products under the ESLA is hereby submitted to this House for approval. Mr. Speaker, I should note that on the basis of existing world crude oil prices, the implementation of the two proposed levies for sanitation and pollution, as well as to pay for excess capacity charges, would result in a 5.7% increase in petroleum prices at the pump. Mr. Speaker, the data shows that under the Akufo-Addo government, the increase in petroleum prices is the lowest in the Fourth Republic. And the data shows. Mr. Speaker, in the year 2020, for example, there was a cumulative net decrease in petroleum prices at the pump by 7.46% and diesel by 9.53%. Between 2009 and 2012, average petroleum prices increased by 29.5% annually. Between 2013 and 2016, average petrol prices increased by 24% annually. Between 2017 and 2020, average petrol prices increased by 8.26% annually. Mr. Speaker, statistics, data don't lie. Mr. Speaker, this confirms the fact that there are better managers of the economy recognized by all. Mr. Speaker, the financial sector cleanup and the refund of monies to depositors have restored investor confidence and protected the hard-earned savings of millions of Ghanaians. However, this has come at a huge cost of over 21 billion to government and indeed to the state. Mr. Speaker, government will therefore introduce a financial sector cleanup levy of 5% on profit before tax of banks to defray outstanding commitments in the sector. The levy will be reviewed in 2024. Road tolls. Mr. Speaker, to maintain improvement on our roads, and all of us in this House, every now and then demanding of the Minister for Roads improvements in our road network and indeed improvement in our roads. Mr. Speaker, to maintain the improvement on our roads, government will review existing road tolls and align them with current market rates. This will form part of the framework for promoting burden sharing as we seek to transform our roads and infrastructure sector in a post-COVID era. Mr. Speaker, furthermore, in 2021, we will amend the Fees and Charges Miscellaneous Provisions Act 2018 that governs the setting of rates and tolls to accommodate an automatic annual adjustment that will be pegged to previous year's average annual inflation as published by the Ghana Statistical Service. Mr. Speaker, in 2021, the GRA will intensify audits and institute measures to recover all outstanding debts and enforce collections in the extractive industry. A study of the downstream petroleum sector indicates that there is still the challenge of underreporting and evasion of taxes by some industry players. The GRA, in conjunction with the relevant agencies, will mount a campaign to deal with these unlawful acts. Mr. Speaker, gaming has become a major income earner all across the globe and a significant source of government revenue. The influx of online betting and automation of the once totally manual process has changed the character of revenue sources from that industry. It is estimated that Ghana loses over 300 million Ghana cedis annually in revenue due to leakages in the sector. The Ministry of Finance and the Ministry for the Interior would co-supervise the gaming industry and will soon consult with stakeholders to formulate a comprehensive policy to improve revenue mobilization from the source. COVID-19 support. Mr. Speaker, government in 2020 outlined a number of initiatives to cushion the effect of the pandemic on the populace. Some sectors of the economy and sections of the population, however, continue to suffer the devastating consequences of the pandemic. Government is therefore rolling out these additional reliefs for different sections of the population, especially those hardest hit by the pandemic. One, tax rebate. Provision of a rebate of 30% of the income tax due to companies, hotels and restaurants, education, arts and entertainment, and travel and tours for the second, third, and fourth quarters of 2021. Tax stamps. Suspension of quarterly income tax installment payments for the second, third, and fourth quarters of 2021 for small businesses using the income tax stamp system. vehicle income tax, suspension of quarterly installment payments of the vehicle income tax for the third, fourth, and fourth quarters of 2021 for trotros and taxes as part of measures to reduce the cost of transportation. Mr. Speaker, in line with your pause for effect, your system of pause for effect, can I repeat this? Suspension of quarterly installment payments of vehicle income tax for the third and fourth quarters of 2021 for trotros and taxis as part of measures to reduce the cost of transportation. Extension, Speaker, the fourth, extension of the waiver of interest as incentive for early payment of accumulated tax arrears. A waiver of penalty and interest on accumulated tax arrears up to December 2020 to reduce cash flow challenges for companies and individuals who arrange terms with GRA to pay up the principal by September 2021. Beneficiaries of these reliefs will have to be registered with GRA and must have filled their first quarter tax obligations. Mr. Speaker, total expenditure, including clearance of arrears, is projected for 2021 at $113.75 billion, equivalent to 26.2% of GDP. This represents a growth of 13% above the outturn of $100.052 billion recorded in 2020. Mr. Speaker, wages and salaries are projected to amount to $25.799 billion and constitute 22.7% of total expenditure, including arrears clearance for 2021. As a percentage of GDP, the wage bill is projected to be 5.9% in 2021 compared to 6.5% recorded in 2020. Use of goods and service is also projected at $5.967 billion or 1.4% of GDP. This represents 5.2% of projected total expenditure, including arrears clearance. Mr. Speaker, interest payments are projected at $35.864 billion, equivalent to 8.3% of GDP in 2021. Of this amount, domestic interest payments will constitute about 79.1%, an amount of 28.368 billion Ghana cedis. Transfers to statutory funds, as well as all other earmark funds, are estimated at 18.081 billion, that is 4.2% of GDP, representing 52.2% growth over the recorded outturn of 2020. Mr. Speaker, capital expenditure is projected at 11.423 billion, that is 2.6% of GDP in 2021, a decline of 5.5% over the 2020 outturn. Of this amount, domestic finance capital expenditure is estimated at 3.31 billion, that is 0.8% of GDP. An amount of 8.112 billion Ghana cedis has been estimated for foreign finance capital expenditure, and this will be funded by a combination of project grants and loans. Mr. Speaker, based on the estimates for total revenue and grants and total expenditure, the 2021 fiscal operations will result in an overall fiscal deficit of 41.298 billion, equivalent to 9.5% of GDP. Financing of the fiscal deficit will come from both domestic and foreign sources. Net domestic financing will amount to 25.424 billion, that is 5.9% of GDP, while net foreign financing will amount to 15.870 billion, amounting to 3.7% of GDP, and will include a planned international capital market program to raise up to $5 billion, of which 1.5 billion will be used to support the implementation of the 2021 budget, and the rest for liability management. Speaker, a corresponding primary deficit equivalent to 1.3% of GDP is also projected for the year. Now, update on key programs. The programs and activities being implemented by the MDAs and the MMDAs are based on Ghana's medium-term National Development Agenda 2018 to 2021, as well as the Ghana Beyond Aid agenda. The programs also aim to attain the objectives and targets arising from our international commitments with regard to the UN Agenda 2030, that's the SDGs, and the African Union Agenda 2063. Mr. Speaker, as I indicated earlier, the health and economic consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic has adversely impacted the delivery of the planned programs and activities of MDAs and MMDAs approved in the 2020 budget. However, it is projected that the rollout of the government's vaccination plan, which started in March this year, will expedite a resumption of full economic activities and facilitate the implementation of the planned programs and activities in the 2021 budget. Speaker, I will therefore highlight the performance of key sectors in 2020, as well as programs and activities planned for the implementation in 2021. Health. Mr. Speaker, in pursuit of government's health infrastructure drive, including Agenda 111, the ministry awarded contracts for the construction of 101 district hospitals, 7 regional hospitals, and 3 psychiatric hospitals. In 2021, the implementation of these projects would continue. In addition, the following health infrastructure projects were completed in 2020. Staff housing for 4 district hospitals at Trifo-Praso, Tepa, Nsoko, and Bekwai district hospitals. District hospitals in Sola, Tolon, Somenya, Buipe, Huita, and the polyclinic in Bamboy. 9 CHIPS components at Wiaboman, Greater Accra region, at Chirifo, Bono region, Kofi Asua, Bono region, Manti Wareso, Brunhaf region, Amachi Krom Bruno region, Miriam Friwo, Bono region, Samproso, Ashanti region, Koforidiania Offenso, Ashanti region, Akaso, Western region. Mr. Speaker, to expand health workforce, government recruited 58,191 personnel into the various agencies in the health system. Out of this, 50,970 were permanent staff, and the remaining 7,000 were temporary workers in 2020. Mr. Speaker, in 2021, government will continue with the construction of the following health infrastructure projects: the Koforidua Regional Hospital, Shama District Hospital, the La General Hospital, the Tema Regional Hospital, reconstruction of the Central Medical Store, District Hospital in Kranza, Accident and Emergency Center, Doma Hospital. Education. Mr. Speaker, in line with the commitment to ensure adequate logistics for effective administration of schools and educational directorates, government procured and distributed 840 pickup trucks and 350 buses. In addition, 2,000 motorbikes were distributed to circuit supervisors to enhance monitoring in their line of duty. Speaker, in recognition at the basic education program level, in recognition of the important role of infrastructure in the quest to provide basic education for all children, a total number of 195 basic education projects were completed in 2020. In 2021, government will continue with those ongoing infrastructure projects. Mr. Speaker, government in 2020 absorbed the examination registration fees for 403,878 candidates from the public junior high schools across the country. In 2021, the registration fees of 416,066 candidates from public junior high schools will also be absorbed. The Speaker, can I take that again? In 2021, the registration fees for 416,066 candidates from public junior high schools will also be absorbed. The Speaker, the implementation of the free senior high school program has resulted in increased demand for secondary education. The total number of beneficiaries from the 2019-2020 academic year was 1,200,580 students. A total of 539 projects out of the 1,119 senior high school infrastructural projects have been completed to accommodate the increased enrollment of free senior high school students. In addition, government completed 28 community day senior high school e-blocks under the Secondary Education Improvement Program. Mr. Speaker, government has invested a large amount of resources to increase access and improve quality of TVET education by expanding infrastructure through the construction of new institutions and upgrading of facilities in existing technical universities as well as technical and vocational institutes. Mr. Speaker, to make colleges of education freely accessible to all eligible students and trained teachers to drive quality education provision, an amount of 78,857,120 Ghana cedis was disbursed to a total of 47,135 teacher trainees in all public colleges of education for the second semester of 2019-2020 academic year. In 2021, Mr. Speaker, an amount of 171,241,500 Ghana cedis will be paid for the first and second semesters of the 2020 and 2021 academic year. Energy. Speaker, in 2020, the country had adequate generation capacity to meet the demand for domestic, commercial, and industrial customers. The 200 megawatts Amandi Power project was approximately 98% complete and currently at the last phase of commissioning. Phase 1A of the 400 megawatt early power project, 147 megawatts, that's the phase 1, is currently going through commissioning. In 2021, the Ameri plant will be relocated to Kumasi to help stabilize the national grid. Mr. Speaker, the power purchase agreement renegotiations aimed at reducing capacity charges and consequently the overall cost of power generation are ongoing. The third round of negotiations has commenced following the approval of recommendations submitted by the negotiating team. Subsequently, Mr. Speaker, renegotiations were concluded with Senate Energy Limited, and discussions with AXA Energy Company Limited are nearing completion. Mr. Speaker, following the approval of the Polygu multi-purpose dam project by Parliament, pre-commencement activities, as well as engagement of the owner's engineer to provide technical support to VRA to supervise and manage the EPC contract has commenced. Mr. Speaker, to strengthen our national grid, the following projects, which are various stages of completion, will continue in 2021. Lot 1, the Kumasi Kintampo of the 330 kV Kumasi Bolgatanga transmission line project is nearing completion. The 161 kV Volta Achimota Malam transmission line upgrade project has an overall works completion rate of 53% for the Volta Achimota section and 31% completion rate for the Achimota Malam transmission line. Remedial works on the Abuazi Prestia 330 kV transmission line is 90% complete, and construction works of the A4BSB Pokwasi bulk supply point is 92% complete. Mr. Speaker, other projects to be pursued in 2021 include the construction of a new substation at Dunkwa on Ofin, reconstruction of the overaged 161 kV transmission lines from the Abuazi through Dunkwa to Asarienso with higher capacity, and reconstruction of the existing 330 kV and 161 kV Abuazi switch yards. Mr. Speaker, a total of 388 out of the 560 communities were connected to national grid under the Rural Electrification Program. The national electricity access rate increased from 84% in January 2020 to 85.17% by the end of December 2020, with over 10,000 communities so far connected to the national grid. In 2021, the ministry will ensure and monitor the completion of ongoing SHEP 4 and SHEP 5 projects across the country. Various electrification projects in the northeast, Savannah, Eastern, and Volta, Ashanti Western, Western North, Ahafo, Bono East, and Buri regions, among others, will also be undertaken. 766 towns will be connected under these projects in 2021. Mr. Speaker, in line with our commitment for a green economy, a total 26 megawatts plant out of the 50 megawatts plant solar project undertaken by the Bui Power Authority was commissioned on the 27th of November 2020. The remaining 24 megawatts plant and a 1 megawatt plant floating solar plant is expected to be completed by the third quarter of 2021. Mr. Speaker, total crude oil production achieved from the 3 producing fields totaled 66.93 million barrels from January to December 2020, translating to an average daily production of 182,860.13 barrels. A total of 88.53 billion standard cubic feet of gas, translating to average daily gas export of 2.41 SCF, was delivered for power generation and non-power gas users. Mr. Speaker, in 2021, the ministry will continue the negotiation of petroleum agreements and monitor activities on the Jubilee, the TEN, and the SGN fields. The projected production from the 3 producing fields in 2021 is expected to yield a total of 57.3 million barrels of oil and 93.07 billion standard cubic feet of export gas at a daily average of 156,986 barrels of oil and 254,986.3 million standard cubic feet of gas, respectively. Development of a petroleum hub. Speaker, the Petroleum Hub Corporation Bill was passed by Parliament in law on the 23rd of October 2020. In 2021, we will ensure the setup of the operationalization of the Petroleum Hub Development Corporation. Preparatory activities, such as the conduct of a strategic environmental assessment, spatial planning, and land acquisition activities towards the development of the hub, will be continued. Security, crime management program. Speaker, in 2020, to preserve the peace and security of the nation, the Ghana Police Service deepened the intelligence-led policing through gathering of critical intelligence for effective and efficient combat of criminals in a proactive manner. Speaker, 709 officer cadets graduated and 2,335 recruit officers passed out of the Ghana Immigration Service GIS Academy and Immigration Service Training School, respectively, at Asenfosu. The service arrested a total of 5,448 other nationals for breaching immigration laws, and penalties were imposed and fines collected from the offenders. In addition, 28 of the offenders were arraigned before the law courts. The ministry, through the Ghana Prison Service, will continue with the construction of the Swan Prison Remand Project and other prison construction projects, train 2,200 inmates in technical and vocational skills, and provide formal education for 1,000 others. It also built the capacity of 1,350 personnel who have recently been recruited. Mr. Speaker, Defense. The Ghana Armed Forces continue to complement internal security in 2020. It collaborated with other security services to offer assistance to civil authorities to ensure peace and security. The operations include Operation Calm Life across the entire country, Operation Sit Down, Look at the Borders. The Ghana Armed Forces assisted the Ghana Police Service, Local Government and Rural Development, and Zoom Lion Limited in Operation COVID Safety. Mr. Speaker, in 2021, the Ghana Armed Forces will continue to conduct operations aimed at law enforcement at sea and shore. At sea and ashore. These operations include the Volta Lake patrols, drug enforcement in support of the Ghana Maritime Authority and the Narcotics Control Commission. The construction of a forward operating base at Ezinlobo, Western Region, as part of the government's national strategic plan to protect the country's oil, gas, and other natural resources is 10% complete. Government also gave approval for the establishment of 12 additional forward operation bases and 3 logistics centers along the northern borders of the country to prevent cross-border crimes and terrorist infiltrations. Infrastructure works on the 500-bed military hospital at Afare in Kumasi is 85% complete as of December 2020. Overall completion, factoring the installation of medical equipment, is at 58%. The ministry in 2021 will ensure completion and use of the facility. National security. Speaker, the National Intelligence Bureau, NIB, the National Signals Bureau, NSB, counted the terrorism-associated e-crimes, violent and organized crimes, and other national security threats. Mr. Speaker, in 2021, these agencies will improve the capabilities of intelligence gathering, dissemination, and special operational activities among the security and intelligence agencies. Road and bridge construction. Mr. Speaker, His Excellency, the President, Nadu Dankwa Akufo-Addo, in presenting the message on the state of the nation, declared 2021 at the second year of roads. Speaker, with this declaration, we will continue the prioritization of road construction. Government will continue to pursue the following ongoing projects that are at various stages of completion under the Sino-Hydro Master Facility. Speaker, the Accra Inner City roads, about 84 kilometers, the Kumasi Inner City roads, 100 kilometers. The Tamale Interchange Project, which is about 60% complete. The PTC Roundabout Interchange Project, Takoradi. Adenta Doduwa Dual Carriageway. The Sunyani Inner City Roads, 39 kilometers. Western Ridging and Cape Coast Inner City Roads, 32.19 kilometers. Upgrading of selected feeder roads in Ashanti and Western regions. Construction of Hohoe, Jasikan, Dodi Pepesu Road, 66.4% kilometers, which is 32% complete now. Mr. Speaker, government will also continue with some ongoing projects which have seen significant progress as follows. The Nsawam Apedra Road, this northbound Kwafu Chrome Apedra Road, 33 kilometers, which is about 39% complete. Apedra Bonsu Road, 23 kilometers. The Bogatanga Boku Pomakum, 116 kilometers, which is 31% complete. The Nkwanta Oti Damanko Road, 50 kilometers, which is 54% complete. Oti Damanko Napanduri Road, 209 kilometers, which is 77% complete. The Berekum Saikwa Road, 34.6% kilometers, which is 88% complete. The dualization of the whole main roads, totaling 10.5 kilometers, with 55% complete. The Teshi Link Road, 7.5 kilometers, 77%. The whole Fumen Road, 18.4 kilometers, about 93% complete. The Bolga Boko, from kilometer 12 to 24.5, a stretch of 12.5 kilometers, which is about 100% complete. The Wale Wale Road, 57 kilometers, is 55% complete. Roundabout between the Judicial and Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, 87% complete. And the rehabilitation of the new Abrem of Fuasi Kuma Road, 38 kilometers, which is 15% complete. Mr. Speaker, in 2021, works are also expected to commence on the following major pipeline projects. Construction of the Dufo Adidome Asikuma Junction Road, 63.1 kilometers. That is construction of Dufo Adidome Asikuma, 63.1 kilometers. And the Asuchari, the Junction 39 Road, and Asuchari Aveyemi, the interchanges there would also be constructed. The interchanges at Dufo, Adidome, and Asukuma Junction will also, Mr. Speaker, will be done. Construction of bridge over the Volta River at Volivo. Construction of the Swami interchange will be done. Rehabilitation of the Tatali Zabzugu Yendi Tamale Road, 165.8 kilometers. Speaker, will be undertaking. Rehabilitation of the Zabzugu Nakwali Bimbila Road, 73.6 kilometers will be done. The rehabilitation of the Dome Kitasi Road, 19.5 kilometers. Design and construction of the Buipe, Yape, and Daboya bridges, the 3 bridges, will be constructed. Construction of the Tema Aflao Phase 1 Road, 17 kilometers to be done. Construction of the Tema Akosombo Road, 64.7 kilometers. Speaker, will be done. Rehabilitation of the Asin Praso, Asin Fosu Road, Phase 2, which is 60 kilometers. Construction of the Tema Motorway, Runabout Phase 2. Supply of installation of bridges component for 50 steel bridges. Rehabilitation of the Kumasi Inner City, already mentioned 100 kilometers. asphaltic overlay of selected streets in Accra and Tema, 100 kilometers, rehabilitation and upgrading of selected streets in Tamale and Yendi, Nalerigu, Walewali, Gambaga, and Damongo. About 100 kilometers of these will be done. Mr. Speaker, works progressed steadily on the Pokuase and Obichabi-Lamte circle interchanges under the Accra Urban Transport Project. Work is expected to be completed on these projects by the end of 2021. Works are ongoing on the construction of 7 bridges in the northern region. These are located in Kulun, Garu, Ambalara, Kulungugu, Doninga, and Sicily. Overall, fiscal progress stands at 97%. Works on all these bridges are substantially complete. Mr. Speaker, overall progress of 5 Belgian bridges and 13 Spanish bridges are 70% and 100% respectively complete, as well as repair works carried out on the following: the Kaneshi Bridge, West End, Ashaiman Tunnel, Bottom Slab, the Malam Interchange, and the Afienya Bridge. The Ministry's Public-Private Partnership Program for the financing, construction, and management of rural infrastructure is progressing steadily. 4 projects are at different stages of preparation. They include the Accra-Tema Motorway PPP project, the 31.7-kilometer stretch, the Accra-Cape Coast-Takoradi PPP project, which involves 208 kilometers, the Accra-Kumasi Expressway project, 245 kilometers, the development of the Tema arterial roads, also to come under PPP, would also be done. Mr. Speaker, food and agriculture. The ministry continued with the implementation of its successful Planting for Food and Jobs program. In 2020, in order to mitigate the effect of COVID-19 pandemic on food production, the ministry enhanced farmers' access to production inputs and increased the plant beneficiary target of 1.2 million to 1.4 million. A total of 1,736,510 farmers benefited from subsidized fertilizers and improved seeds under the Planting for Food and Jobs program. Speaker, under the Rearing for Food and Jobs program, the ministry procured 531 improved breeds of small ruminants, pigs and poultry for distribution to farmers. The Speaker, the ministry, as I said, procured 531,000 improved breeds of small ruminants, pigs and poultry for distribution to farmers, not 5 chicken per farmer. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the Ghana Irrigation Development Authority continued with the construction of various irrigation projects which are at various stages of completion. The Tamni phases 1 and 2, which is 90% and 50% respectively. The Improvement phase 2, 90%, rehabilitation, modernization, and expansion of existing schemes at Tono, which is 95%, the Kong irrigation scheme, 61%, and Kong left bank irrigation project, which is 72% complete. In 2021, the ministry will complete the construction of the Tamni phases 1 and 2, the Improvement phase 2, and resettle displaced persons in the reservoir area. Mr. Speaker, as part of the efforts to reduce the fall armyworm infestation to the barest minimum, 89,060 liters and 11,630 kilograms strategic stocks of insecticides were procured and sprayed on all affected land areas. A total of 261,147 hectares was sprayed, and the loss of about 652,867 metric tons of maize, valued at 783,440,400 Ghana cedis, was prevented by the spraying that was done on the fall army areas. Mr. Speaker, in 2021, the ministry will procure 97,000 liters and 14,000 kilograms of insecticide for control of the fall army worm. Cocoa sector, cocoa production and pricing. Speaker, the producer price of cocoa for 2020 and 2021 crop year was increased by 28% from 8,240 per ton, Ghana cedi per ton, to 10,560 Ghana cedis per ton. Cocoa Board's crop review for 2020 and 2021 year projected a production figure of 896,000 metric tons. By the end of February 2021, cocoa taking over stood at 771,461 metric tons, which puts the country on course to achieve its target. Mr. Speaker, Gender, Children, and Social Protection Program provided one hot, nutritious meal per school day for children in basic schools. A total of 2,980,000 pupils in 8,683 basic schools benefited from the program in 2020. This will continue in 2021. Mr. Speaker, the LEAP program made payments to 335,013 households, benefiting 1,451,747 individuals nationwide in 2020, demonstrating government's care for its citizens. In 2020, the ministry will validate data to scale up the beneficiary households from 335,013 to 350,000 households. Judicial Service. The Speaker, in 2020, the following courts: Garu District Court, Bongo District Court, Soutuam District Court, Mansour Dubia District Court, and Masaman High Court were commissioned and automated with direct transmission systems, which allows for real-time production of court proceedings during court sittings. Mr. Speaker, government will commence the construction of a multi-purpose judicial training institute in Accra in 2021. Additionally, the Mankasim Court Complex in the Infantsiman municipality, as well as the High Court Odumasi Krobo in the Lower Manya Krobo municipality, will be opened in 2021. Parliamentary business. Mr. Speaker, in 2020, 49 out of the 60 bills presented were passed into law. During the same period, 36 instruments laid before the House entered into force. The House also admitted 40 statements, while 42 parliamentary questions were asked and responded to by ministers. The Speaker, Parliament will continue to discharge its constitutional obligations through the performance of its representation, legislative, financial oversight, and deliberative functions. These functions, among others, entail considering various bills and legislative instruments, ratifying loans, and other international agreements presented to the House. In 2021, to enhance the efficiency of Parliament in discharging its constitutional oversight obligations on the transformative agenda of government, A number of initiatives will be continued. These include the e-Parliament project, the Table Office Management Information Systems, Geographic Information Systems, and the Budget and Fiscal Analysis Office. Mr. Speaker, it is expected that enough provision would also be made for the recruitment of research assistants for the 275 members of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, transport. Government continued its program of modernization of the country's seaports to position them as a leading container hub within the West African sub-region. At the Tema port, 3 berths of the dedicated container terminal, MP's Terminal 3, were completed and are in operation. The remaining berth has progressed ahead of schedule and is expected to be completed in 2021. At the Takoradi port, the development of a container and multi-purpose terminal by Ibistec Limited, a wholly owned Ghanaian company, is progressing steadily. The marine and dredging works have been completed, and construction of a 600-meter quay wall will be completed in 2021. Mr. Speaker, a 30-year concession agreement was executed between Ghana Shippers Authority and Ashanti Port Services Limited to develop an integrated logistics terminal at Buankra. This will decongest the Tema port and facilitate transit trade, especially to landlocked countries of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger in the context of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Mr. Speaker, to ensure safe launching and landing of artisanal fishing, as well as create and maintain hygienic environment and create job opportunities within the fishing communities, a total of 9 landing sites selected for development are at various stages of completion. The Azim, Discov, Mori, Mumford, Winneba. Azim is 59% complete, Discov 58% complete, Mori 48% complete, Mumford, otherwise referred to as Joma, 46% complete, Winneba 29%, and Senya Breku 91%, Gomwafete 82%. Aviation Development Program. Mr. Speaker, government over the years has embarked on massive infrastructural developments to facelift existing airports to meet international standards. Key amongst these are: 1, expansion of both Kumasi and Tamale airports. In 2021, both projects are expected to be completed and open to general public. Rehabilitation works on the Sunyani Airport Phase 1 is about 93% complete and is expected to be completed in 2021 for the airport to resume operations. Mr. Speaker, as part of government policy to ensure that all regional capitals have at least 1 aerodrome to improve connectivity and boost tourism, feasibility studies for the development of an airport in Cape Coast has commenced. Other sites identified for construction of aerodromes include Apoa in Poho, Yendi, Moli, Navrongo, Paga, Ketikrachi through public-private partnerships. Communications and digitalization. Mr. Speaker, funding has been secured for the development of 2,016 solar-powered cell sites to cover at least 25% of the population which is unserved. At the end of December 2020, 410 out of the 2,016 sites were built across the country. In 2021, the remaining 1,606 sites will be completed. In line with government's digitalization agenda and commitment to expenditure controls, the National E-Procurement System was deployed in 2020 for the following 5 pilot entities: Department of Feeder Roads, Ghana Cocobot, Ghana Health Service, Koforidua Technical University, and the Tema Metropolitan Assembly. Scaling up of the system to 200 additional entities is programmed for the year ending 2020. Local governance, decentralization, and rural development. Mr. Speaker, using the District Assembly's performance assessment tool, an amount of 185,931,850 Ghana cedis was transferred to qualifying MMDAs as investment grant allocation to support the implementation of respective 2020 annual action plans and budget. In 2021, the ministry will conduct a performance assessment using DPAT for 260 assemblies based on 2019 financial year performance. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Local Government, Decentralization and Rural Development through the Department of Community Development is promoting the Alternative Livelihood Program in 18 illegal mining affected districts. In 2021, the Department of Community Development will retool and upgrade 2 CDVTIs to provide technical and vocational training to 5,000 youth, provide alternative livelihood skills training for 1,250 persons to address the challenges of illegal mining activities, and to train 600 social workforce in child and family welfare issues. Speaker, collaboration with faith-based organizations. Under our social partnership model, to broaden the dialogue for development, government regularly engages the faith-based organizations on various national issues and they remain a key partner in revitalizing the economy under the 100 billion Ghana City Ghana Cares program. In 2020, the faith-based organizations were instrumental in the fight against COVID-19 in various ways, supporting national readiness, complementing health service delivery through the Christian Health Association of Ghana, managing the distribution of government's dry food packages to vulnerable households during the lockdown period, providing counseling services, providing skills and entrepreneurial training for the youth, and augmenting public sensitization and awareness campaigns. Mr. Speaker, in 2021, the faith-based organizations will continue to fulfill their vital roles within government, within the Ghanaian society, and government affirms its support to the formal collaboration as a permanent component of our nation's governance. The National Cathedral of Ghana. Mr. Speaker, the National Cathedral of Ghana, which will provide an interdenominational sacred space for the nation, remains a national priority. Despite the delays caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, work is on course to construct the iconic edifice in the heart of the nation's capital. The construction of the cathedral is already introducing some critical innovations to the country. As part of the construction, over 200 trees on the site of the cathedral, some of which are nearly 100 years, have been relocated to a temporary site by the Department of Parks and Gardens. Some of the trees will be brought back upon completion of the cathedral, and others replanted elsewhere, making the edifice environmentally sustainable, setting the stage for the rollout of new initiatives and reforms. Speaker, we will implement new initiatives and additional reforms across several sectors of the economy in order to enhance further the quality of life of Ghanaians, to support domestic entrepreneurs and businesses, and to deepen access to public services. In pursuit of this, we will begin preparations for the rapid deployment of underlisted initiatives and reforms in 2021. 1, the National Equipment Leasing Policy. Speaker, in 2021, government will formulate a National Equipment Leasing Policy to cover medical equipment, vehicles, photocopiers, printers, and scanners, among others, as part of measures to more efficiently manage our capital expenditure budget. Transport sector recapitalization project. Speaker, we'll also commence work towards implementation of a long-term lease to own financing
arrangement for commercial vehicle owners and operators who need to replace aged and unroadworthy commercial vehicles. Mr. Speaker, this indeed is a good initiative, and if I may repeat it, Mr. Speaker, we will commence work towards the implementation of a long-term lease-to-own financing arrangement for commercial vehicle owners and operators who need to replace aged and unroadworthy commercial vehicles. National Rental Assistance Scheme. Mr. Speaker, in partnership with the private sector, we will commence the establishment of a National Rental Assistance Scheme with a seed of 100 million Ghana cedis. The scheme would crowd in additional investment from the private sector to provide low-interest loans to eligible Ghanaians to enable them pay rent advance. Enhanced Student Loan Scheme. The Speaker will also commence the planning towards the implementation of Enhanced Student Loan Scheme to provide students, with the exception of teacher and nurse trainees, an option to obtain a student loan without requirement of a guarantor. The prospective student must have a national identification number from the Ghana card. COVID-19 impact mitigation measures. Mr. Speaker, the COVID-19 pandemic that hit the entire world in 2020 has had a major impact on nearly every household, business, and economy in the world. Anticipating that the consequences will be severe and persistent, governments around the world have relied on a wide range of measures to support businesses and households. While these responses have been uneven across countries, they are unprecedented in their magnitude. Mr. Speaker, in mid-year review and the supplementary estimate, we presented the immediate impact of the pandemic on our economy and outlined robust responses to mitigate them. After a full year, we have a good sense of how devastating the impact has been on our economy. Socio-economic impact on Ghana. Mr. Speaker, the direct health impact Mr. Speaker, the direct health impact of the pandemic has been significant, with very unfortunate fatalities. Infections rose from a weekly average of 11 persons in the last week of March to a peak of 781 infections in the last week of July 2020. This was followed by a gradual decline in recorded infections, which reached 104 cases in the last week of December 2020. However, a new wave of infections saw average weekly infections rise from 99 in the first week of January 2021 to 880 by the week of 5th February 2021. Fortunately, Mr. Speaker, we are seeing a steady decline on weekly average infections, which stood at 379 by the week of 5th March 2021. Mr. Speaker, compared to many countries, Ghana has been rather successful in managing the COVID-19 outbreak. This success stems from the swift, proactive, and bold response from government, and of course, with the collaboration of the health care workers. Speaker, economic impact of the pandemic. The impact of this pandemic has been severe. The COVID-19 struck at a time the economy was firmly on the path of fiscal consolidation. The initial restrictions implemented contained the virus and impacted the economy extensively. In addition, the households and businesses, key sectors such as hotel and hospitality industry, trade and industry, agriculture, health, transportation, manufacturing, real estate, financial as well as education sectors have been negatively impacted. Mr. Speaker, the COVID-19 Business Tracker Survey, jointly published by the Ghana Statistical Service, the United Nations Development Programme, and the World Bank, suggests that about 770,000 workers, nearly 26% of the total workforce, had their wages reduced, and about 42,000 employees were laid off during the partial lockdown last year. The pandemic also led to the reduction in working hours for close to 700,000 workers. Mr. Speaker, transport workers, drivers, and conductors of trotros were particularly vulnerable as they work under informal settings and do not have access to social safety nets. Formal operators also suffered serious financial constraints. Government in 2020 spent 36,552,789 Ghana cedis as operations and payroll support to Metro Mass Transit from March to December 2020 and supported the Intercity STC with an amount of 6,338,232.77 Ghana cedis as of January 2021. Mr. Speaker, COVID-19 has led to disruption in corporate and general business confidence and affected projected revenues, profitability, liquidity, and corporate growth. State-owned enterprises, most of whom were severely impacted by this pandemic, are expected to underperform. Government's mitigating measures to the pandemic, health and health-related response. Mr. Speaker, government's initial response to the health impacts of this pandemic was aligned in the National COVID-19 Emergency Preparedness and Response Plan. The plan helped to manage and contain the spread of the virus, as well as strengthen the national capacity for surveillance, diagnosis, and case management. Inspired by the significant successes from the implementation of the EPRP and considering the lasting impact of the pandemic within the medium term, government has prepared and rolled out a more holistic plan dubbed the National Strategic COVID-19 Response Plan, July 2020 to December 2024, NSCRP. Mr. Speaker, the NSCRP focuses on better case containment and management. It prioritizes timely releases of test results, sustains funding of isolation and quarantine facilities. This plan has helped to improve coordination among actors, enhance motivation of health personnel, and ensured continued provision of equipment and logistics, including PPEs. Economic and social measures. Speaker, government implemented the coronavirus alleviation program to address the socio-economic impact of this pandemic on households and businesses. So cost of electricity and water services from April to the end December 2020, and provided food rations to vulnerable groups during the partial lockdown. Mr. Speaker, cognizant of the direct and immediate effect of restrictions on livelihoods of a section of society, government provided 1,827,581 and 917,142 cooked food packs to vulnerable and underprivileged persons within Accra and Kumasi, respectively. In partnership with faith-based organizations, government also distributed dry food packages to about 470,000 families during the period of the partial lockdown. Electricity consumption was subsidized. Government fully covered the consumption of over 1 million lifeline customers and subsidized 50% of the consumption of all other customers for the period. Speaker, through the initiative, 10 million fellow Ghanaians benefited from free water supplied by Ghana Water Company, Company Limited between April to December 2020. The average monthly water supply of 9.24 million cubic meters increased by 43.21% to reach 13.23 million cubic meters. Furthermore, a total of 474 small towns and 1,143 rural communities benefited from the free water provided by the Community Water and Sanitation Agency. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to announce that His Excellency the President has approved the continuation of the provision of free water to up to 5 cubic meters, that is 1,100 gallons per month, to vulnerable groups. In addition, we will continue to provide electricity to lifeline consumers till the end of June 2021, when it is expected that many Ghanaians would have been vaccinated. Mr. Speaker, under the Operation Return Home program, government assisted 10,025 Ghanaians whose circumstances had been worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic to return home. In doing so, we protected the lives and welfare of Ghanaian nationals abroad and promoted positive perception of the state of Ghana during those difficult times. Support to enterprises. Mr. Speaker, the launch and operationalization of the 750 million Ghana Cedi Coronavirus Alleviation Program, Business Support Scheme, CAP-BAS, has mitigated the impact of the pandemic on several micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. Government, through the National Board for Small-Scale Industries, collaborated with over 80 business associations and key participating financial institutions to facilitate timely disbursement of the funds. As of December 2020, about 412.88 million Ghana cedis had been disbursed to support 277,511 businesses, of which 69% were female-owned. The scheme has saved over 650,000 MSME jobs. Mr. Speaker, as an offshoot, the CAP-BAS has created pathways to formalizing the large informal sector, given that over 800,000 tax identification numbers were generated and over 10,000 businesses registrations activated. Mr. Speaker, in the financial sector, the policy and regulatory measures rolled out by the Bank of Ghana, including the provision of 7 billion Ghana cedi worth of support to borrowers between March and June 2020, enhanced liquidity in the banking sector, preserved capital buffers, and offered relief to customers. These measures also enabled banks and specialized deposit-taking institutions to provide support to critical sectors of the economy to mitigate the adverse impact of the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, educational measures. In relation to the education sector, government employed a strategic, controlled, progressive, and safe easing of restrictions to prioritize the well-being of our children. The reopening of schools in January 2021 was preceded with a comprehensive sanitation program, provision of 11.5 million hand sanitizers, 25 million face masks, 62,000 Veronica buckets, 3.5 million packs of paper towels, 85,000 liquid soaps to facilitate the safe return of students to schools. Considering the special needs of our kindergarten pupils, arrangements were made to provide 100,000 electronic sanitizer dispensers, 404,000 gallons of sanitizers, and 30,000 thermometer guns for kindergartens. National Trust Fund, the COVID-19 National Trust Fund. Speaker, to leverage other resources to fight the pandemic, government passed the COVID-19 National Trust Fund Act 2020, Act 1013 in April 2020 to establish the fund. As at 31st December 2020, the fund had mobilized 57,134,093 Ghana cedis, of which 45,218,313 Ghana cedis have been utilized. These resources complemented government's effort in providing PPEs and medical supplies to COVID-19 selected institutions, distribution of food items to the aged, the vulnerable, and needy persons, providing vehicles to selected treatment centers, the National Public Health and Reference Laboratories, testing centers, and COVID-19 Central Care Management Team. It also supported the construction of the National Infectious Disease Center, COVID-19 Private Sector Fund. The Speaker, being together in this adversity, the private sector in Ghana swiftly organized and complemented government's efforts towards fighting the pandemic. As of December 2020, the fund had mobilized 44,339,138.98 Ghana cedis, out of which 40,203,404.70 Ghana cedis was invested in various activities, including the construction of a 100-bed National Infectious Disease Center in Accra. Ghana Cares Obatampa Program. Mr. Speaker, government strategy to build back stronger is contained in the Ghana COVID-19 Alleviation and Revitalization of Enterprises Support Ghana Cares Obatampa Program, which was launched on the 18th of November 2020. The 100 billion program, which Ghana City program, which is by far the boldest and biggest economic recovery program in the country's history, enables us to address the challenges and also seize the opportunities created by the COVID-19 for socio-economic transformation. The Obatampa program will, over the next 3 years, transform, revitalize, and modernize our economy and return it to the highest standard, high and sustained growth. The key projects under the CARES program include supporting attracting educated youth into commercial farming, B, building the country's light manufacturing sector, targeting agro-processing and food import substitution, pharmaceuticals and textile and garment subsectors, C, developing engineering, machine tools, and ICT digital economy industries, D, fast-tracking digitalization, E, developing Ghana's housing and construction industry to support local construction companies to participate in the hospital construction program under the Agenda 111 Plus scheme. Establishing Ghana as a regional hub, G, reviewing and optimizing the implementation of government flagship and key programs, and H, creating jobs for young people and expanding opportunities for the vulnerable in society, including persons with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, this year, government will embark on dedicated actions to operationalize the program by establishing delivery units in relevant MDAs with clear milestones. We will partner the private sector, academia, and other practitioners to facilitate and monitor implementation of the program. Mr. Speaker, our quest to transform and ensure higher manufacturing output under CARES will be complemented by sustained efforts on technical and vocational skills, mostly in targeted sectors, while enhancing collaboration between industry and managers of technical education. Speaker, as I indicated, the Skills Development Partnership with faith-based organizations will catalyze and drive the drive towards this objective. Mr. Speaker, conclusion. Mr. Speaker, and I know my colleague, the recycled leader of the House, the Honorable Cletus Abuka, who is sitting down, is even much more tired than I am. Mr. Speaker, this 2021 budget is indeed a landmark budget. It recounts our experience in the most difficult combination of health and economic crisis that this nation has ever encountered. The indicators clearly demonstrate that we have weathered the storm and are indeed ready to storm ahead. This has been accomplished through the decisive leadership of His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the strong partnership with Parliament, the cooperation with our faith-based organizations, our social partnership with organized labor and employers associations, the private sector, the healthcare workers, the security agencies, traditional leaders, civil society organizations, the media, and all Ghanaians, buttressed by the resilience we built in the first 3 years of the President's administration. Mr. Speaker, the 2021 budget outlines the President's program for accelerated recovery from the devastating impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. It explains our plans to emerge stronger by pressing on with economic transformation, strengthening our social compact, and building a sustainable future to create prosperity and equal opportunity for all. As a government, we have amply demonstrated our ability, resolve, and determination to change the trajectory of our economy. While COVID-19 has been a major disruptive force, it has reinforced our conviction to transform our society and to do so with greater urgency. Mr. Speaker, my Sunday school teacher has taught me in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 10. And I quote, "The bricks are falling down, but we will rebuild with hewn stones. The sycamores are cut down, but we will change them into cedars," unquote. Isaiah chapter 9, verse 10. Mr. Speaker, I want to assure this august House and the people of Ghana that in 2021, we will return to a path of fiscal consolidation and sustained growth. We will continue to implement people-centered policies. In 2021, we will continue to consolidate our major flagships to improve welfare. We will change the culture of uncompleted projects and, as far as practicable, finish what has been started. We will continue to invest in the real sector to drive growth. We will accelerate the industrialization and transformation of our economy and move away from the Gadgetsburg economy. We will prioritize support to private sector and entrepreneurship to create jobs and improve incomes. We will make Ghana a hub for commerce, financial services, and manufacturing to take full advantage of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, the world's largest free trade area. We will continue to invest in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics to support every aspect of our economy. We will continue the digitalization agenda to improve public service delivery and enhance revenue mobilization. We will prioritize the security and safety of our people. We will secure higher returns on our mineral resources by using innovative structures. We will aggressively and efficiently implement the Ghana Cares through well-structured delivery units. And we will seek to improve the health and well-being of our people and pursue a happier and wiser society as envisioned by our Ghana Beyond Aid agenda. Mr. Speaker, all these can be accomplished if we stay focused, believe more in ourselves, work together with a common purpose. As I indicated earlier, implementing the vision we have set requires that we mobilize every resource, use them efficiently, and also work harder to increase productivity. We must accept that our country's ability to improve the standard of living of our citizens over time depends more on increasing productivity. Mr. Speaker, with this budget, we are on the path of revitalizing the economy, resuming the transformation drive that was disrupted by COVID-19. We expect to accomplish this with the help of the Almighty God and the visionary and competent leadership of our President, support from the Parliament of Ghana, and the help of every Ghanaian. Mr. Speaker, to our fellow Ghanaians, we urge you to take courage, persevere, and keep faith with us. COVID-19 has been an adversity that makes us pause, think carefully, find answers, build and sustain relationships. We are still strong in this adversity. The strength of Ghana lies in the power of our people to persevere. The audacity of our faith in Ghana requires us to continue to share in the burden of developing our nation. Mr. Speaker, before I resume my seat, allow me to express the gratitude of His Excellency the President for the enormous support this august House has extended to him since taking office in 2017. The current composition of this House reflects the expectations of Ghanaians for both sides of the House to work together. The realization of Ghana Beyond Aid will be attained by the debate. It will be attained by the debate of ideas and consensus building. It is my belief that the consideration of the 2021 budget will reflect this guiding principle. Mr. Speaker, in 2021, we will consolidate our gains, complete ongoing projects, and continue our flagship programs. Mr. Speaker, this government believes that the Ghanaian state is a daring state, a resilient nation. The recent victory by the national under-20 football team, the Black Satellites, on Independence Day reminds us that when we are united in purpose and work together as a team, we can do extraordinary things. Whilst we debate and may disagree on issues, we should always be united on the broad goal of advancing the welfare and progress of our people beyond partisan politics in principle. Mr. Speaker, there is more to us than we have so far realized. As the Lord said in Genesis 11, chapter 11, verse 5, and I quote, "If as one people speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them," unquote. Mr. Speaker, by this unity of purpose, we will stand as one people, speaking one language of progress to unleash the energies of our people for social mobility and shared prosperity as we take great strides to move our nation forward. Mr. Speaker, I join you today in praying to Almighty God that on account of the platform offered by this budget, God should inspire and strengthen our people to make time thought, and sacrifice to speed the day of the coming beauty of Ghana and Africa. Amen. Mr. Speaker, I present to you on this momentous occasion the 1 year Wahia budget. I'll present to you the 1 year Wahia budget. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move. Thank you very much.